So, do you start Aaron Nola with 2 starts next week? Let's discuss on Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Welcome into FBT Express on Friday, May 16th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White, and let's preview Week 9, starting with the schedule. 18 teams with 6 games next week. There are 12 teams with 7 games. The Orioles, Red Sox, Guardians, Rockies, Tigers, Astros, Angels, Brewers, A's, Phillies, Pirates, and Mariners. You got all that? The Rockies have 7 games, as I mentioned. All of them are at home in Coors Field. 4 against the Phillies and 3 against the Yankees. Starter sit these 2-star pitchers, Scott, and we have Kodai Senga, who's been very good this season, but some tough matchups at the Red Sox, at home against the Dodgers.
Yeah, I don't think twice about it. I don't think he's as good as his 1-something ERA, but he's good enough that 2-star week automatically start Kodai Senga.
Ryan Pepiot is home for 2 against the Astros and Blue Jays.
Yeah, he's been pitching better lately. His home park is kind of dangerous for him, but Astros and Blue Jays offenses have struggled this year, so I think Pepiot in most cases you're going to start him too.
What about Chris Bassett, who, he's been shaky in 4 of his last 5. He gets the Padres and at the Rays.
I could see shying away in a roto league, depending on what categories you're pursuing right now. But in most cases, you're probably going to start Chris Bassett.
I mentioned it up at the top. Aaron Nola, who is coming off one of the worst starts of his career. He is in Coors Field and at the Athletics.
Yeah, this is a hard one because my overall stance on Aaron Nola is, look, there are some small reasons to wonder if maybe he's just reached the end of the road here, but there are small reasons. And I think the most likely scenario, given how we've seen recent Aaron Nola seasons play out, is that he's going to come around and you're going to be happy with the numbers at the end. But in order to be happy with the numbers at the end, I'm thinking specifically from a roto context, you can't afford to pick and choose so much. You're going to end up missing out on the correction that comes from the bad starts like we just saw. And worth noting, the few starts prior to that were actually very good for Aaron Nola. So I think at Colorado, at Sacramento, 2-start week, not going to call a must start, but I probably would start Aaron Nola.
What about Brandon Pfaadt, who is at the Dodgers and at the Cardinals?
Points league only.
And Walker Buehler looks like he's making his return home against the Mets and Orioles.
Rather not.
Who are the 2-star pitchers that you are adding and streaming for next week?
Logan Henderson, who probably should just be picked up anyway now that he's back in the Brewers rotation. His first 2 major league starts, despite that multi-week gap between them, were both excellent in the same way. And I think he's good. Plus, he's facing 2 offenses, Orioles and Pirates, that rank in the bottom 6 in runs scored, toward the bottom of the league, Pirates especially. That's 1-start option. 2-start options, Gavin Williams. He's at the Twins. He's at the Tigers. He's been pretty shaky this year, but the strikeouts and whiffs have been trending up. In his most recent start, he got the walks down. So I think overall, we're seeing positive signs from Gavin Williams. There is downside risk for sure, but I think he's reached a point where the upside is intriguing enough to give him a second look in 2-start weeks. Tomoyuki Sugano, I think, doesn't have a lot of upside, and I do think he's overperformed to this point. Having said that, he has a 3.08 ERA and a 1.03 WHIP on the year. So in a 2-start week, you're probably not second-guessing it too much, particularly in points leagues. Jose Soriano, 62% ground ball rate on the year. I know the performance has been kind of shaky, but it's going to go well if he's getting that many ground balls, and his last start was his best. At the Athletics and versus the Marlins, I like that second matchup, especially for Jose Soriano. Mitch Keller, always dangerous. You never know when the other shoe is going to drop and he's going to have one of those disaster starts. But I think it's specifically for points leagues. the volume he takes on, kind of must start with 2 starts. Reds and Brewers are his matchups to the extent that that matters. And finally, Will Warren, kind of a deeper sleeper target here, but I like what I've seen from him recently. The strikeouts have been trending up. His 4-seamer is one of the best in baseball in terms of opponent's batting average and whiff rate. And then he has a sweeper with 3,000 RPM, which is fantastic. Plus the matchups are great. He gets the Rangers and he gets the Rockies, even in Coors Field. I'm considering the Rockies a favorable matchup right now. So if you need to go real deep, Will Warren, solid choice.
All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back in, FBT Express. Scott, you gave us your 2-star pitchers. What about 1-star streamers for next week?
AJ Smith-Shawver has been trending up and trending up hard. Just had a career high 17 whiffs against the Nationals, 2-hit effort. And that was a couple turns after a 1-hit effort. And he's facing the Nationals next time out. So AJ Smith-Shawver seems like a must. Yusei Kikuchi gets the Marlins. He's been not totally on point this year, but there have been enough decent outings that I think he'll take advantage of the Marlins. Nick Martinez, he has gotten back to throwing strikes at a very high rate. Last 3 starts, no walks between them. Just came through against the White Sox. I think he'll come through against the Pirates this week. And finally, Jamison Tyone, quality start machine. Downside risk, but he's facing the Marlins, so I think quality start is the most likely outcome.
Let's slide over to the hitters and the best matchups for next week. We have the Phillies, Orioles, Angels, Pirates, and Brewers. The worst hitter matchups, Braves, Royals, Twins, Rays, and Nationals. Scott, who are your sleeper hitters for week 9?
You mentioned the Orioles have the second best hitter matchups. No lefties in their 7 games. That's especially good news for Ryan O'Hearn, who has had his best season so far. His strikeout rate is great. His pull air rate is the best it's ever been. And you don't have to worry about him sitting with no lefties on the schedule. The matchups are phenomenal, like I said. And that also works to the advantage of Ryan Mountcastle, who's been a huge disappointment this year. But you look at the data, how hard he's hitting the ball, his pull air rate, which is the highest we've seen since 2021 when he hit 33 homers. I think Mountcastle's eventually going to come around. I think there's a good chance it happens with matchups like he has this week. Toughest pitchers on the schedule are like Logan Henderson and Lucas Giolito. So it was really favorable matchups here for the Orioles. And Mountcastle has been picking it up recently, batting over 300 in May. We just need that power to come around. Rhys Hoskins, you mentioned the Brewers have the 5th best hitter matchups. I'm surprised he's as available as he is because he has been on fire since mid-April. That's Rhys Hoskins. Trent Grisham, surprised he's as available as he is, given that he has a dozen homers already. Is part of kind of an outfield rotation there with the Yankees, which hurts. But first 3 games this week at Yankee Stadium. Next 3, Colorado. So I think Trent Grisham at least has one more good week in him and may have many more. Kyle Stowers. I thought maybe he was slowing down. I was unsure about putting him as a sleeper hitter for the current week 8. Came through in a big way then, so I'm going to do it again for week 9 here, especially with just one lefty on the schedule. Let's get Kyle Stowers' roster rate up to the point that he's no longer eligible for this list. Josh Young, bit of a power binge recently. Rangers have pretty good matchups, including 3 against the White Sox. Taylor Ward, power binge recently. Angels have the 3rd best hitter matchups. Max Kepler, got to get a Philly in there since they have the very best hitter matchups. And sort of like Ryan Mountcastle, Kepler's been one of the biggest underachievers according to StatCast this year. Dalton Varsho, recently back from surgery. Not quite playing every day yet, but he had a 2-homer game the other day. It was the 2 hardest hit balls of his career by far. So something's going on there with no lefties on the schedule for the Blue Jays. I'd like to give Varsho a look. And finally, Jordan Beck of the Rockies. Tough matchups, but all the games are at home, where his OPS is nearly 900 and 4 are against lefties. Against whom he has an OPS near 1,000.
All right, for more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and we will be back again next week. Bye-bye.